Hi, it's Mark Bossert, producer of the Pawlik Automotive podcast and video series. We're here with Mr. Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience. And we're talking about a 2008 Dodge Grand Caravan this morning that had a coolant leak. What was going on with this vehicle, Bernie? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, so the this Dodge Caravan actually had a very large coolant leak coming from the back of the engine, well, in between the engine and the transmission. Pour some coolant in and it would be dripping out almost as fast as you could pour it in. Not quite, but almost as fast as. So yeah, there was a very major leak coming from this engine.
So after you dried your shoes off, what was causing such a large leak?
Well, what we found, what I suspected, and it actually involved removing the engine from the vehicle to verify it, was that there was probably a frost plug that had failed. And it didn't take long. As soon as I removed the radiator cap, I note right away there was a lot of rust on the radiator cap and sitting in the top of the radiator. And the owner of the vehicle had told me that they'd recently replaced the radiator. And so something that it wasn't even an old radiator had rust in the coolant. To me, suspicious immediately of it's probably a rusted out frost plug.
So what is a frost plug?
So what a frost plug is, and it's also known as an expansion plug. They put them in the engine block. The purpose, one of the purposes supposedly is to prevent if you had water in the cooling system. So this goes way back to before antifreeze was invented or used. If you had water in the cooling system, of course, when it gets cold out, water freezes and it expands. And as it expands, of course, it'll crack the metal of the engine block. So if you put these plugs in, these frost plugs or expansion plugs, these plugs are supposed to be pushed out by the expanding water and prevent the block from cracking. In reality, that usually doesn't work. I've had many vehicles in the past where people have had water in the cooling system, it freezes and cracks the engine block. So they don't actually work like they're supposed to. But they also do apparently hold the casting, when they cast an engine block, they actually hold some of the molds in place as well. So that's another reason apparently for having them. Although I've never actually been in a foundry and seen a block cast, but that's another purpose for it. Nonetheless, they need to be intact. They're generally a metal plug made of a thin, maybe a 16th inch thick, millimeter thick piece of metal that's hammered. It's hammered and friction fit into the engine block. And so they are susceptible to rusting out.
So why had this frost plug failed?
Bad maintenance. Clear and simple. Bad maintenance. And by the way, the frost plug is worth about $1. Just to put things in perspective. But the labor involved in replacing it is huge. But let's just go into some pictures right now. But yeah, I mean, basically, bad maintenance is what caused it. The owner it's a 10-year-old van. Probably should have had the cooling system flushed at least once, maybe twice, in this age of vehicle. And I would suspect never had it done. Maybe there was a coolant leak at some point. They let it run with some water in it for a while, and it's a cast iron engine block, so it will rust up. So we'll get into some pictures. So there's the 2008 iconic Dodge Caravan, or popular, as you would say. There's our first sort of sign when before I even did any repairs on the vehicle. You can see there's rust in the cooling system. I mean, that's a sign right away that there's a fair amount of rust throughout the cooling. It never just stays in one spot. Once it develops, it tends to circulate around. So there was a first telltale sign. So what's involved in this repair is actually removing the engine and transmission from the vehicle because it was leaking. This is the bell housing area where the transmission bolts to the engine. And this is the rear frost plug. There's two of them, one here, one there. This is a camshaft plug. This actually seals off an oil passageway. But there, where the red arrow points, is a little hole that is basically developed in the frost plug, leaking out the coolant. When we look a little further, this is what the frost plugs removed. And this is the kind of guck that was inside the back of the engine, the rust and corrosion. You can see this is the back of the cylinder walls in these two areas. And this is just rust that had... I stuck my fingers in here and dug a bit of it out, but that's basically the mess that was inside there. In doing the service and repair, I have a special flushing tool and flushed all of it out. It still, once you develop this kind of rust, it's impossible to get rid of it all, but I probably removed about 95% of it in the process of doing this work. And just to look at things in perspective, after flushing out some of the heater hoses, this is what the coolant looked like. And that's not yellow antifreeze. There are some antifreezes. There are some antifreezes that have this color, but this is definitely rusty water. So there's our picture show.
Basically, just from not flushing the coolant system, that would cause this much rust and damage in the interior of the engine.
Yeah. As I said, my suspicion is that it may be that well, first of all, it definitely didn't get flushed and serviced as much as it should have, and there was probably a time where it may have been low in coolant, and the people had just put water in it for whatever temporary reasons. Maybe the temporary reasons were like 6 months or a year. But between the two of those things, that's how the rust developed. And really, I actually purchased this vehicle from the owner because they didn't want to spend the money repairing it. So essentially, they've taken a very good Dodge Caravan with pretty low mileage, 150,000 kilometers, and basically, that vehicle is to them just junk, and it's a shame because one or two coolant flushes and some good maintenance would be, $200-300, not a lot of money. And yet now they're out buying another vehicle. So, it really does pay to do your maintenance, especially, this is if they paid for this repair, it could be $3,000 to $4,000. I mean, still worthwhile with the age of the van. It was otherwise in pretty good shape. But again, $300 or $3,000, as the Fram guy used to say, you can pay me now or pay me later. It's a classic example.
And how often, other than too often, how often do you see these expensive repairs from lack of maintenance?
From time to time, we get vehicles, and a lot of times, most of the times, it's from people who haven't changed their oil enough, and the engine's something's blown up inside the engine. In all fairness, sometimes things blow up even for people who maintain their car well, but it's more often the lack of maintenance that causes these problems, or things that sludge up inside the engine, timing chain problems, rattles, cam gears. It's so important to change your oil and fluids regularly on modern cars. You don't need to do them as often as you did in the old days. I'm thinking like 20, 30, 40 years ago. But with modern cars, it's like it's even more critical to do them when they're due or even sooner, just to, it saves you a lot of money. And
Dodge Caravans have had a mixed reliability record. Some years are pretty problematic with transmissions and engines, depends on the motor. How is this generation of vans?
These are pretty good. We don't see a ton of problems with them. It's been interesting, with this engine, I not only replaced the frost plugs, but I took the engine, it had a couple of oil leaks, and I figured while the engine's out, I may as well just re-gasket the whole engine, including the head gaskets, because you never know how hot this person got the engine, and I don't want to sell it to someone and find the head gaskets blow in a month or even a year. So it's actually an incredibly simple engine. So there's not really a lot to go wrong with it. And I mean, for reliability, the transmissions are definitely better than they used to be. Overall, they're actually a lot better than they used to be.
So there you go. If you're looking for maintenance and or repairs on your Dodge Caravan, the guys to see in Vancouver are Pawlik Automotive. You can reach them at 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You have to book ahead. They're busy. Or check out their website, pawlikautomotive.com. Hundreds of videos and articles on there about all makes and models. Of course, on our YouTube channel, Pawlik Auto Repair, same idea, hundreds of videos on all makes and models and types of repairs. And of course, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We appreciate it. Thank you, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. And thank you for watching and listening.